Hello, I'm State Representative Dorothy Pelanda from the 83rd House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Mike Ditto. We have with us today State Representative Dorothy Pelanda, who serves the 83rd House District, which includes Union and Logan counties as well as most of Marion County. Representative, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So you were appointed to the House of Representatives in July.
Yes.
Before we get into that whole process and what you've been focusing on, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Mike, I was born and raised on a farm just outside Marysville, a farm our family still owns and which I manage for them. Graduated from Marysville High School, and from there graduated from Miami of Ohio, and then went to Akron School of Law. After graduating from law school, I returned to practice in Marysville, my hometown, with my father, who had just retired from the bench. From there, I developed my domestic relations practice, and I had been a practicing domestic relations attorney for 30 years before this political appointment became available for my application.
So what inspired you to seek the appointment? There were a lot of folks in the district who sought the appointment after Representative Burke went to the state Senate. What inspired you to take this on?
Well, I became very politically active in the 80s when our city, the city of Marysville, went from a charter form of government to its current form. That was my first opportunity to run for elected office. Thereafter, I became very involved in city politics and city government and various issues that affected me not only as a businessman in the community, but as a parent growing up and raising my children in that community. In 2008, I ran for Common Pleas judge in our county, and that was a great experience. And from there, decided as my children aged and moved from the home, that this job provided a greater opportunity for public service. You know, Mike, my family has always been public servants. My father was a judge of our county for many years, very involved in many service organizations, and as a very young child taught us that we are our brother's keeper and that we need to view our community as one in which it needs everyone's assistance in order to flourish. From my days in 4-H, where we'd clean up the roadsides, to my community involvement through my children's activities, my community where I still live today is probably the most rewarding part of my life as I contribute to it. When this appointment became available, I looked at my life, and my youngest child was getting ready to graduate from high school. I knew, for the most part, what this kind of service would involve, and this provided an opportunity for me to provide greater service to my community and to the state of Ohio. It came at a perfect time in my life. Had it come 5 or 10 years earlier, I would not have been interested, because my primary goal was to be a mother to my children. And now, as our youngest daughter graduates from high school and enters Wright State this fall, I can devote myself fully to this endeavor.
Now, you don't live too far from the State House,
No,
not far at all. What would you describe to your constituents as a typical day here in the State House, if there is a typical day?
Well, a typical day would involve my getting to the office as early as possible to go over the mail that I've received from constituents and various concerned individuals. Then meeting with various individuals in my office before heading off to session or to committee meeting. Caucus is also a very exciting part of my day. I think that the most rewarding thing to me is to connect the concerns that I have of my constituents with the legislation that we're reviewing. If I can think of an individual, a business, or a community that would benefit from the legislation we're studying, it makes it so much more vital to me and of interest.
In 2010, members and even candidates for the Ohio House said that jobs and the economy were by far the #1 issue facing their individual House district. Of the 99 House districts, every one of them is different. Is that true, that jobs and the economy are the #1 issues facing your constituents right now?
Absolutely. And my constituents from a variety of walks of life, from a variety of interests, all echo the same thing. Dorothy, please keep your focus on jobs. Yes, we understand that there are environmental issues. We understand that there are health issues. But please, Dorothy, for ourselves, for our children, and for our future generations, please keep Ohio the best place it can be to raise our children so that our children will want to stay here and their children will want to stay here and continue to make Ohio the best place it can be for our families.
And one of the committees you serve on is the Economic Development Committee that also deals with small business issues. What other committees do you serve on, and what issues are you working on in those various committees?
Well, as you said, Mike, I am on the Economic Development and Small Business Committee. In that capacity, we have had the occasion to visit various businesses, educational institutions, to try to connect with and to study how businesses and educational institutions can better collaborate so that there's not such a disconnect between education and the degrees and the children coming out of those educational institutions and the job opportunities that are available. I have great respect for our chairman, Nan Baker, who is devoted to the cause. Her saying is, it's all about jobs, and it is. I also thoroughly enjoy my work on my other committee, Health and Aging. Lynn Watchman is a tremendous chair, and we have vital issues there, of course, with health care reform that we are all facing, as well as legislation that is affecting all of the people in our district, particularly the increased licensure for APNs and nurse practitioners that allow our doctors in our community to facilitate and better serve the community. And again, my philosophy is in studying each piece of legislation, if I can connect it up with a particular individual, business, or community, it makes it so much more meaningful.
You've been working on some legislative initiatives too, in addition to casting the many votes that you have just in the short time that you've been here. And one of them that I have in my notes here is House Bill 348. Could you tell us a little bit about that bill?
Yes, House Bill 348 deals with major reforms to spousal support in the state of Ohio. This was introduced earlier last year, and it is an attempt to cause some kind of a uniform analysis of how judges and magistrates approach the issue of spousal support in a domestic relations case. In 1990, the state of Ohio came up with a uniform calculation of child support. Prior to that time, Mike, each county had its own method of calculating what was appropriate for child support. Then in 1990, a uniform calculation was adopted by the state of Ohio. Now all 88 counties, all judges, all magistrates, all lawyers, and even individuals can use this formula to determine, at least from a starting point, what the basis for child support will be. We have no similar method for examining spousal support. Now, my initial bill included what you would call a formula, something similar to a child support calculation.
Sure.
However, in working with the Ohio Judicial Conference, Judge Lewandowski, who is the chair of that program, and OSBA, we intend to submit in the very near future a substitute bill, which instead of a formula will provide presumptions. Presumptions so that if parties have been married 7 years or more, there is a presumption that a judge or a magistrate must look at certain factors in determining whether spousal support is appropriate, and if so, how much. That is for what's called a definite term of spousal support. The judges have also come up with presumptions regarding an indefinite amount of spousal support, and that would be for 25 years or more, marriages lasting 25 years or more. There are certain specifications that go along with those presumptions. So it is my hope that by submitting this substitute bill for committee review, that we begin for the first time in Ohio's history to have a uniform method of viewing spousal support in all 88 counties. Thus, instead of having one party to a divorce or dissolution case starting from ground zero and another person starting from a specific number, they can hopefully start at the middle ground with these presumptions. At this point in time, I have the full support of the Ohio Judicial Conference in this substitute bill, and I'm working with OSBA to further define some of the parameters.
And you've got another bill that's actually in the drafting stages right now dealing with school fees. What's that one about?
Well, it came to my attention from a magistrate with whom I work that there's a statute that says if school fees are owed by any student and that student attempts to transfer or graduate, a school may deny transferring the grades, transcripts, or diploma if that child owes school fees. This bill says specifically that if a child is the subject of an abuse, neglect, or dependency case, and the magistrate transfers that child out of a home into another school district, a school may not refuse to transfer those grades or transcripts. Further, if at any point in time the child was a subject of an abuse, neglect, or dependency case during his or her minority, a school may not refuse to issue that child a diploma. I've met with the governor's policy team, and they are very excited and supportive of this. The Ohio Attorney General's policy team is also very excited about this piece of legislation. I'm looking forward to getting this introduced in committee very soon. In fact, it will be assigned a number today in the non-voting session. And I'm hoping that we can open a dialogue about whether or not we should expand the parameters of this bill to include extracurricular fees, and whether or not we should look at applying this piece of legislation to indigent children, if we can define what indigency would be.
Are there other bills that you're working on currently?
I am. With regards to my interest in economic development and business, I'm looking at creating an industrial recovery tax credit. Nicknamed the Dinosaur Building Bill.
Interesting name.
It is, and what that means is this credit would be open as an incentive for companies to invest in facilities that require a significant rehabilitation or remodeling expense. After a building has been designated as an industrial recovery site, companies may be eligible for a tax credit as a percentage of the qualified rehabilitation expense. So there's a graduation of eligibility of the percentages. Other parameters would include that the building has to have been in service at least 15 years, with at least 50,000 interior square feet, and it has to have been vacant at least 1 year or more.
Okay.
So it's an exciting, Indiana actually has a similar industrial recovery tax credit. I am researching that legislation or that law in Indiana to try to mirror that and to study what works and what doesn't work in Indiana to craft the similar legislation of our own.
So it sounds like you've been pretty busy drafting bills, casting votes, going to committee meetings. What would you say has been the most rewarding part of your job in the 6 to 8 months that you've been here up to this point?
That would be like saying, what is your favorite, an apple or an orange? Session is absolutely thrilling. To sit in my seat and realize all that have come before me is an awesome thing. Committee hearings are vital and exciting as we listen to proponent and opponent testimony, and then cast our vote as to whether or not it should be sent out of committee for a floor vote. My work in the district is equally as compelling and interesting. I love nothing more than going to the township meetings or the city hall meetings and listening to the concerns of my citizens, all with one focus: to continue to make Ohio the best it can be, the Ohio that I knew as a child growing up with my family, not only for my children but for future generations. You know, Mike, in closing, I have a sign that's been etched on my wall in my office, and it says, "This land was not given to us by our parents. It is on loan to us from our children." And I carry that philosophy with me every day as I sit in the House and as I visit the people in my district.
That's a very, very compelling closing, very good saying to have your constituents take with them. What's the best way for your constituents to get in touch with you? Should they call you? Should they email you? Should they stop by and see you in the district?
Whatever is easiest for them. I tell them that I am in my State House office almost every day as I get my feet wet, so to speak. I'm always available by telephone, and usually I will give them my cell phone, my personal cell phone, because I want to be as reachable as possible, and my email as well. I have an excellent aide in Kayla Smith, and if I give her 10 things to do a day, Mike, she's got 20 done.
That's great.
So we're both here to help the constituents to get the fastest answers and the most complete answers that they have to their concerns.
Excellent. Well, Representative, thank you for joining us on the show today. We appreciate it. Hopefully you'll come back maybe after the session ends, before we break for the summer, and talk about what's happened in the first half of 2012.
I'll look forward to that.
Very good. Well, thank you. And we look forward to seeing all of you here again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. Thanks for being here.